In this section, we have been examining evidence-based practices and strategies with diverse learners. We now have the opportunity to learn about a program for dual language learners that successfully implements these practices. We will hear Dr. Laurie Olson, Director of the Sobrato Early Academy Literacy Initiative and author of Reparable Harm, talk about preventing schools from creating long-term English learners. This term refers to students who have been in a U.S. school for 6 or more years and have not progressed normatively in language and academic development. As you view this video, look for examples that illustrate how early childhood educators can support learning and development in young children who are dual language learners.
I want to touch on one other example because, and then I'll draw this to a close. This is all, okay, we've got these long-term English learners, this astonishing, really a horrifyingly large number of kids that arrive in our secondary schools as long-term English learners. Can't we prevent it from happening? You know, what is going on at elementary? And so my last example is going to be around the preventing side. And if you just think back to what I've said already, there's some clear things from what we've learned about long-term English learners that ought to inform us. We know that we're going to have to give them a full curriculum from the beginning. We know that we're going to want to align and articulate so there are no gaps and no inconsistencies in the programs and in their language development along the way. We know we want to have that solid early foundation in both the home language and in English to the extent we're able to do it. And starting in preschool if possible, so we could do a pre-K3 solid early foundation. We know that we're going to focus on engagement from the very first minute that they walk in the door, that those patterns of disengagement and passivity are not going to develop. We know that very rich oral language development is going to be a hallmark in elementary, that we're going to have assessments that really allow us to look at language development all along the way, that are good assessments and can inform us as we go. So, the project that I'm directing in Redwood City and San Jose, we call it the CEEL model, the Sobrato Early Academic Language Model. Intensive, intentional, standards-based language development across everything we do in the day. Bolstered by a system of teacher professional development, I'll tell you more about in a minute, a process of curriculum infusion and alignment, and a whole set of systems and structures that allow us to articulate from grade levels. So just picture this. No matter what part of the day we're talking about, whether we're talking about classroom climate or the math instruction or the kind of parent engagement that happens or student grouping or assessment, in every aspect of the school day, everything's been designed around what will maximize rich, oral, complex, precise, social and academic language, right? So here's that chart that I flipped to before. You now know what it means. Okay, the research pillars are, we're going to align and articulate from preschool on. It's not just they need a high quality preschool, but we want the kind of instructional strategies they're beginning to learn, the turn to your partner to talk, the oral language strategies, interaction strategies, the graphic organizers, all of that we want to have start in preschool and develop as they go up through the grades. So it's a familiar and consistent development. Academic language, academic, precise, complex language. Little kids love big words. They can learn all about the thorax and that they can learn all of the sophisticated language they need to talk about things they're interested in learning about. And we need to keep that rigor up. I think I've mentioned these other pillars. So let me give you a little bit more picture of what it looks like though. So we have high leverage instructional strategies we expect to see in every classroom, and that we start in the preschool version of them. So I'm not talking about lecturing to preschools or having them sit there and write over and over again. We're talking about age appropriate, but every one of these strategies begins in preschool and then develops age appropriately as we move up through the grades. So that complex academic vocabulary development, free voluntary access to books, as much as we can get them into connection with books in various kinds of ways. Dramatic play, thematically linked to what they're learning about in the thematic units. Very important for young children, all but disappeared along with oral language from the early grades, those of you who know early grades instruction. Think, pair, share, structured interactions, read alouds, narrative retells, graphic organizers and visuals, songs and chants, facilitated dialogue in the socio-emotional realm. Okay, that's a big term, but what I'm really saying is exactly that. School cannot just be about developing language in the academic realm. They don't have the vocabulary to talk about feelings, relationships, experiences, and they need that as well at a sophisticated level. The evaluation, the pilot has our kids up into first grade at this point, from preschool, kinder, and first grade now. We're seeing that they came to school with very low levels of language. All of them have made significant gains at every one of our sites in all areas of development, cognitive, language, etc. They've made excellent progress in Spanish language development and significant gains in English, so that's important. You know, what I didn't say to you is we're working both in structured English immersion classrooms and in bilingual classrooms because we want to work school-wide to create the climate and the collaboration that's necessary. So we're comparing the kids in our bilingual classrooms with those that are in SEI classrooms but getting rich language instruction only in English. So they're all making really good progress actually in language. And they've outscored by the end of preschool comparable Head Start populations that are also in quality preschools but not using language-rich instruction. They've outscored the end of preschool first grade dual language comparison groups and successful dual language programs, both in English and Spanish. But our children in bilingual programs make greater growth, and this is really important, including greater growth in English. So we're seeing the transfer, because we've started at age 4, the transfer is just happening like that, and the amount of work we're doing in home language, you're seeing it appear in the English almost immediately. And we're seeing that the kids in the SEI classrooms, while they're doing well in their English language development, they're losing their home language. And they're not doing as well in English as the others. So, having said all of that, to draw this to a close, I just want to say that there's a set of system issues that have to get addressed.
Dr. Olson clearly points to the importance of addressing these practices to ensure high-quality instruction for children who are dual language learners or English learners. She talks about the importance of intentional, intense, standards-based language development instruction, a strong focus on academic language, striving for biliteracy, facilitating dialogue around social-emotional domain, and providing high-leverage instructional strategies for all learners. As we continue to explore how these strategies support children who are dual language learners, we will explore how dialogic reading serves as an ideal venue to promote successful learning and development in language and literacy for dual language learners.